Hey everybody, I thought I would do something different today and take a look at a little subject that I think is very important to the history and the vibe of motion pictures that maybe doesn't get talked about enough, and that is the use of architecture in motion pictures. Let me explain. In a lot of movies, especially movies filmed in the 70s and 80s, there was a great fascination with showing brutalist or modernist architecture. It was a way of usually symbolizing the big, terrible, evil, scary corporation or some powerful infrastructure that, whatever the protagonist was, had to go against and had to somehow fight the evils of the world. You've seen it in movie after movie after movie. A corporation, a government entity, and they would use brutalist and modernist architecture because of its cold, sterile, sometimes overbuilt proportions, and it would sit there and evoke an emotion in people just seeing a building. So if you've seen a building like that, you're like, that's who's in charge. I mean, think about something like Blade Runner. I know it wasn't a real building, but when you've seen the Tyrell Corporation, Pyramid Tower, whatever you want to call it in the beginning, you're like, whoever's in there is in control. You knew it immediately. It was just one of those things. And that was used a lot in motion pictures back in the day, especially using places that were real places from the real world, but inserting them into motion pictures so that you would kind of get the feeling in the vibe. Also, I don't know if it's related to it or anything, but let me get into a background, a little bit of my fascination of how this is used in motion pictures and in real life. I'm an upstate New Yorker, and as an upstate New Yorker, you sooner or later make your way to, or know very well, the Empire State Plaza. And if there was anything that's an example of that kind of modernist, brutalist architecture that just looks kind of cold and sterile and intimidating, but at the same time big and monolithic and powerful, is that plaza. From the museum to the towers to everything. It's all white concrete and marble. It's not really warm or inviting, and it just is what it is. It stands out, it sticks out, and it has that insanely, I don't know, powerful look. We also have that up here at our main university, at the State University of New York up in Albany. It's another building that has that look. Everything is big. It's overdone. It's rather sterile. It's all white. It's concrete or it's marble. There's not much warmth to the environment. It's one of those kind of things. So I had that around me a lot as a kid growing up. I actually watched them build some of the Empire State Plaza when I was little, this place called The Egg. And you could see it. It was this weird art theater building, is what it was. Anyway, that always left an impression on me. So when I would see that look pop up in motion pictures, I always found it fascinating. Also, it was neat that if you ever looked from these cities or these plazas or the university around where I am, from a distance, you could see that it was like a concrete patch surrounded by green. It was like something that didn't belong. It just didn't blend into the environment. It just stuck out blatantly when you stared upon it from a distance. So I always found it fascinating in motion pictures when you'd see these environments and these buildings that just stood out like they didn't belong in the environment they were in. You would see a desert and then a building. You'd see woods, a building. You'd see hillsides and a building. And that always created a certain feeling, a certain aura, and a certain vibe in motion pictures. I'm going to list some of the ones that I liked and ones that always made an impression on me. And then I hope in the comments section you guys will make some comments about what you've seen in motion pictures that had that same look and vibe and stuff like that. First, I'm going to get into the movie Looker. Do everybody remember the movie Looker? You know, Albert Finney, all that stuff. Anyway, remember Digital Matrix, the Digital Matrix building? Well, that really turned out to be, filmed in Los Angeles. It was the Hillside Campus Arts Center in reality. But in the motion picture, it was this corporation that was just hanging in the middle of nowhere on a hillside, and it just didn't look like it belonged. It was like almost blended into the hillside. And you went there and you're like, oh, this is some mysterious, evil corporation that nobody pays attention to because it's out of the way. But there it is, planning the demise of society by using mind control and all that kind of stuff. So it was a great look in the motion picture. It had a great vibe in the motion picture. And it was kind of like a cool little setup about a corporation set to the side, ready to take on the world. But there's been other great examples. One of my favorites is Conquest for Planet of the Apes. Great motion picture, by the way. One of my favorite ones from the original Planet of the Apes series. But it had a look. It had a vibe. Now, in reality, it was really the Westfield Century Mall and the areas around it, the Avenue of the Stars, all that kind of stuff, out in Los Angeles. But in the motion picture, it was ominous. It was dark. It was where they would take the apes to train them and basically enslave them. And it had this great psychological weight to it because of the way that the buildings looked, the structures, the coldness of it, the sterility of it. And that kind of thing made an impression in the motion picture. That look, in so many places. Another one that I think is just perfect for this kind of thing is literally the movie Coma. Remember Michael Douglas, Genevieve Bujold, that great flick? Well, do you remember she went to look at this building where they're actually storing all the people comatized? Jefferson Institute is actually what it was called. It was the perfect example of a building like that in a motion picture. In reality, it was a Xerox building, and it was in Massachusetts of all places. But in the motion picture, it was big, heavy, concrete. That one single pathway that she had to take to the front door of the place just built like an impending doom within you, just watching her enter the building. And then whether in or out, it had a sterility to it, a coldness to it, which matched the attitude of the people that were working there, especially the nurse that greeted her at the door. It was just a psychological reinforcement of what that building was and what these people were and the nefarious deeds being cast within it. So as far as location scouting, they did an incredible job finding that building, because it was a perfect building to represent that kind of a corporation up to that kind of stuff, that kind of organ harvesting and all that kind of stuff, if you will, and put it into a motion picture. Again, environment is almost as important as characters in a motion picture, and to see them use an environment like that was masterful to get across the point and the vibe and emotion that they were trying to get across. Another great location was in Death Race 2000. Everybody remember Death Race 2000? How can you not love it? In reality, the building was the Chet Holtfield Federal Building in Laguna, California. But in the motion picture, yes, it had some, let's be honest here, it had some matte paintings around it and stuff like that to kind of juice it out. But the building itself was a great look. The angle designs, everything like that, it just reeked of authority, and it just looked cool as hell in that motion picture. A lot of times, especially in low-budget motion pictures, using a building like that really just puts it over the top, because they don't really have big budgets. They can't really do some of the things the other motion pictures can. So if you take a low-budget movie and you put it in the right environment, at least that environment will get the feeling across that they're trying to do of, this big, all-powerful, problematic, whatever it happens to be, and the heroes have to go up against it. So it always works in low-budget movies, which brings me to another flick, and that would be 1983's Warriors of the Lost World. Forgettable movie? We know. It had Persis Khambatt in it, who played in Star Trek. Remember Ilea? Well, anyway, that was the Nuovo Corviale residential building in Rome, as I hope I pronounced that right. But in this movie, it looked ominous. It looked evil. It looked oppressive. And it worked in this little low-budget shit flick. That location really is the only thing that made this movie sell to a degree and feel like it was actually taking place somewhere and actually going on. Other than that, you had a cornball movie with some cornball fucking scenes in it, and it didn't really do that much. But whenever they showed that complex, it made you feel like, well, this movie's bigger than what it really is. It's got something going on. And hey, maybe I'll watch it for the next 90 minutes. And remember, of course, you had Clockwork Orange. That thing was loaded with great locations, from the tunnel to everything. It was loaded. You wouldn't expect anything else. I mean, it's Kubrick. But it was loaded with stuff like that. But the one building that always jumped out at me was really the lecture building from the Brunel University. I mean, come on. The angles, the looks, the authoritarian type of vibe to it. It just jumped out at you the minute you seen it on screen. So it was a great use of, again, scouting and using a perfect location to sit there and build up a vibe, a look in a motion picture that would be omnipresent. And finally, I'll leave you with this little one. This one really doesn't count as much as some of the others. It's more maybe modernist than brutalist. Take it for what it is. But did you ever see Rabbit, the Cronenberg flick from I think it was '77? His medical buildings, in the apartment buildings, always in the way he films, come on, he had a way, of making these places look scary and spooky, and they're always surrounded by woods, but you'd see this building, this hospital, that looked like it was just in the middle of nowhere, and as soon as you see a building like that, flat, no emotion, no warmth, and it's in the middle of the woods, the greenery, all this other kind of stuff, you have a feeling like whether this is just some weird place doing plastic surgery, you feel nefarious. Now, I know he filmed this thing up in Canada, and it was no places that were that spectacular, that out of the blue. But he made the most of what he had in those movies. I think he did Shivers there, too. And he made them look impressive and scary and spooky just by putting these more modernistic-looking, completely devoid of any kind of real artistic value type buildings, and he would have them sit there and they would just be out in the middle of nowhere, filmed very sterile, with a very sterile feel, and again it would build up an omnipresent feeling that something was wrong. And those kind of things always make a huge impression, even if it's subconsciously as somebody is watching a motion picture. All right, everybody. I know there's a million other ones out there that you guys can point to. Places, locations. Hey, it wasn't a building, but Devil's Tower and friggin' Close Encounters was amazing. Where somebody used a location that was so impressive and invoked such an emotion. Now, all you had to do was be there, and it lifted the level of the motion picture up to another point. It made it feel more than what it was when you went in. It made it feel more epic. If you can think of any of them, or you have your favorites, leave them in the comments below. It'll be fun to talk about. Anyway, until then, take care. Be good. Stay out of trouble. Be kind to a stranger. And most of all, never, ever take any bullshit from anybody. See you soon.